Hey everybody, this is Mr. Moppet coming at you with another APUSH video. Today we're taking a look at topic 3.10, which is focusing in on shaping a new republic. So we've gone through the struggles of trying to create a new national government. We have, gone from the Articles of Confederation to the Constitution, and now we're going to start to operate under this new Constitution. And moving forward in this course, a lot of what we're going to be taking a look at least in terms of political issues, we're going to be organizing for the most part around the administrations of the presidents of the United States. And speaking of which, in 1789, the Electoral College for the first time is going to be using its authority to choose our first ever president of the United States under the new Constitution. And that person, once again, probably not a big surprise for everybody, that is going to be George Washington. The Electoral College, don't forget, every member has 2 votes, and the candidate with the most votes would get a majority of the votes would become president of the United States, and the person that got the second most votes would become the vice president of the United States. Washington was really a singular figure amongst the founding fathers in terms of just kind of universal respect. Washington's never going to be accused of being the most educated guy in the room, but he is going to be respected for his honor, his seeming commitment of putting the needs of the nation first over his own individual needs. Remember, this was the guy that led the Continental Army during the war. And so, and I guess lastly, really, the other big thing to kind of keep in mind is to kind of why the founders are going to unanimously choose Washington as the first president was because Washington seemed to be above politics, where the other founding fathers are going to be, kind of typical political creatures. And as we'll get into later on, there's going to be very quick factions and parties are going to be emerging based on the issues of the time. And the person that seemed least likely to be partisan or form a faction would be Washington. And the idea being is that Washington would be that stabilizing force that everybody, regardless of kind of where you fit on the ideological spectrum of the time, you're going to look up to and respect. So Washington's going to be that unanimous pick as president. John Adams will become the second highest vote getter and would become vice president of the United States. Now, starting off with these first couple of videos in this topic, we're going to be taking a look at some foreign policy matters. And right when the new republic is setting up, right when the new Washington administration is ready to set up shop, there's going to be major issues going on in France that are going to be affecting not just France, not just Europe, but also the United States. And that thing is going to be the French Revolution. Now, in 1789, we're going to be seeing the monarchy toppled, following the storming of the Bastille in July of 1789. And what starts to, be an overturning simply of the monarchy and creating a republic is going to be something that, most Americans initially are going to be in pretty strong support of. Remember, if you were a student of the Enlightenment, if you were a disciple of those values of Rousseau and Locke and others, you looked at what the French Revolution is starting as, and you look at it as the next step in what had already begun in the new United States. The idea being is that monarchies would be toppled, government would be coming from the ground up, from the people themselves, and so this seems like the next logical chapter in that story, and once again, there's going to be a lot of support for that here at home. However, that French Revolution is going to very quickly spiral out of control in terms of how radical it becomes. The initial revolutionaries are going to be proven to be not revolutionary enough. In other words, sellouts of the revolution, and they will also be persecuted. Normally when we think of the French Revolution, as you can kind of see up here, we tend to think of the reign of terror that is going to be emerging, that the revolution has so much inertia that it cannot, stabilize itself. And so, every time, new leadership comes to the forefront, there's going to be a groundswell to overthrow that leadership as not being revolutionary enough. As you can see here, depicted in this painting right here of the very liberal use of the guillotine. So we're going to be seeing blood flow through the streets of Paris, no question about it. And as this French Revolution starts to become more and more radicalized, there starts to become more and more concern about what this really means in terms of whether or not we should be supporting it. Jefferson, for a while, is still going to be, at least for a while, is going to be supporting the revolution. But people like Alexander Hamilton and people that are going to be eventually called Federalists are not going to be in support of this. They're going to be looking at it, and that's going to be, and it's going to be kind of tied into their fears of the masses. The idea of mob violence overthrowing what could happen, what could be established here in the United States. Many would argue that, what we now have in the United States is not a super small d democratic society, that you've got, these educated landed elites, white males that are dominating government and don't really want it to be any more democratic than what it already is. So some of these folks on the more conservative side are going to be worried that, just like the French Revolution was inspired by our revolution, could a more radical uprising here in the United States be influenced by what was going on in France? Now, beyond that, we do see some divides in terms of, whether or not to keep the military alliance with France that was developed during the Revolution. Jefferson, as the first Secretary of State, is going to be a very, very strong advocate for the idea of maintaining that alliance. The idea being is France stepped up to help us when we were in need, and when and if France needs assistance, we should be there for them. However, others are going to disagree. The Hamilton faction, which is going to start to emerge during the 1790s, is not going to be interested in maintaining that alliance. Supporters of Hamilton are going to argue that we should maintain, or we should create, a stronger relationship with Britain, even though we had just gotten out of a bloody revolution with England. Hamilton's argument is that we have a much stronger cultural history with England. We have the same values, or at least more common values than we have with France. And so, there's going to be debate as to whether or not we should maintain this alliance. And that debate really, really intensifies as we get into 1793, where by 1793, the revolution in France had now spilled into an all-out war between Britain and France. And this is going to be an issue that it's going to be hard for us to stay out of it, at least it seems like it, because you've got folks like Jefferson that are saying that we need to jump in and help France because we already have a military alliance with them. You got Hamilton saying, no, if we're going to help, we should help the British. Note also that as we get into the 1790s, we're also going to be seemingly, at least it appears that we're going to be dragged into this conflict because of the emerging reality of impressment. Impressment is when you are a ship on the high seas and another power basically stops your ship and comes on board with the pretense that your ship is harboring runaway sailors from that nation's navy. And so they would come on board and they would go through the ranks of the sailors on the ship, and they would find some sailors and go, oh, aha, those are our runaway sailors. We're going to reclaim them and we're going to impress them into service with the navy of that country. Basically, impressment in reality was a pretense for other countries to basically kidnap sailors of smaller, weaker countries. And at this point in time, the United States is far from being a global power. So American ships on the high seas are going to be very, very easy victims of impressment by both the British Navy and the French Navy. So we're going to be affected by this war that is emerging between Britain and France. So the question then becomes, how are we going to respond? How are we going to deal with this? And from Washington's perspective, he is going to be taking, what is going to be kind of the middle ground. And how do you find a middle ground in terms of supporting France or Britain? Well, as you can see here, it's neutrality. Washington's going to be issuing this Neutrality Proclamation when the war starts, and this is going to be asserting that the United States will not intervene to help either side in the conflict. Washington's attitude, which, I think we look back on it as being pretty wise, his concern is that America at this point in time is still in a very, very vulnerable state. We are not a global power once again. And if we end up on the wrong side of this war, this brand new experiment called the United States might die as soon as it starts. So Washington's belief is that, the war is in Europe. We have the luxury of being, across the ocean. Yeah, you've got some issues with impressment, but still, though, it's going to be the best course in the United States long term to stay out of this conflict. Now, Hamilton is going to be in pretty strong support of this Neutrality Proclamation, but Jefferson is going to be very upset with this issue, or with this decision by Washington. Jefferson believes that with Washington taking the neutrality route, he is basically, thumbing his nose at the country that had provided us assistance militarily when we needed it the most. So Jefferson, out of protest of Washington's Neutrality Proclamation, is going to end up resigning from the cabinet. So this is going to be a highly divisive issue within Washington's cabinet. And it's going to be one of the key things that's going to lead to the formation of these two parties, Hamilton's Federalist Party and Jefferson's Democratic Republican Party. Now that being said, just because the United States is going to be issuing a Neutrality Proclamation, that doesn't mean that everybody's going to be respecting it. Once again, impressment's still going to be an issue on the high seas. But even closer to home, you're going to be having to deal with the activities of this guy right here. This is Edmund Charles Janae. Now, Janae is going to be a French envoy to the United States. And despite Washington's very clear assertion of American neutrality, Janae is going to be coming to American shores and will be actively trying to recruit Americans to serve in the French military, particularly the French Navy, to help out with the war efforts. And, understand what this means is that, when we talk about issues of impressment and we talk about what's going to be called the Citizen Janae affair, there's a very, very clear understanding at this point that the United States is not viewed as particularly very worthy of the respect of the major powers of Europe at the time. The thought was that we are, not even a varsity level country, not even a JV level country. We're some sort of, junior high level country in terms of global power, and at the same time, lack of respect because of that. So early on, one of the things we want to be mindful of is that in America's infancy as an independent country, we're going to see our sovereignty threatened pretty regularly, and there's going to be, very limited respect for that, and the Janae affair and impressment is certainly going to be a part of that. All right, so we're going to go ahead and stop it right now. We'll come back with some more videos. We'll see you next time.